Hey everybody, it's Chise here. So as of the beginning of writing this script, I got the idea to make this video about an hour or so ago, so I figured, why not go ahead and make it? I've said a lot about Oceana Precure in text formats on several platforms, but I want to be able to express my thoughts and emotions about my series in a video format because to me, it feels more real that way. There's so much I want to express and discuss, and I can't always do that properly through text. Hence, why this video exists. I also know a lot of other fans struggle with coming up with ideas for their very own fan series, so I also wanted to discuss all of my existing fan series in varying levels of detail, to give people ideas on what they can explore in their own stories, and to give them advice on how to find inspiration for themes and character designs. I think it would be fun and helpful to some to discuss these aspects of creating fan series through the lens of my own experiences when creating my own. So today, to address the aforementioned purposes of this video, I will briefly be discussing how I came to be in the community, how I came to create each of my fan series, or discontinue them in certain cases, how I get inspiration to create new series, and discuss my current and most popular series in much more detail, Oceana Precure. Now for the obligatory and very basic background of what the Precure franchise is. Precure, or Pretty Cure, is a magical girl anime franchise that's been running for nearly 20 years in Japan. It started off in 2004 with the series Futari wa Precure, and is still going strong in 2022 with the series Delicious Party Precure. Every year, each series has a new theme, whether that be food, space, makeup, etc., and introduces a new cast of characters. Each series can have between 45 and 50 episodes that air nearly every Sunday throughout the year. I first learned of the franchise around 2013 when I was in early middle school and going through several phases related to magical girl-themed content such as Wings Club, Sailor Moon, or the Powerpuff Girls anime. I was active on a website called Scratch, and there I would make various transformations and other content that was definitely very poor in quality, but still related to my interests. It was here when I first learned of Pretty Cure. While I was active in this community, I had a loose interest in Smile Precure specifically, but that interest quickly wore off as I continued to learn about other franchises and shows that appealed to my interests, and I moved on to create content for those. Around the end of June 2018, I rediscovered the Pretty Cure franchise through a video recommendation on my YouTube feed, and I began to fall down the rabbit hole of watching every single transformation from every single series, and began engaging in fan communities and with fan content. I learned of a very specific fan series, and I joined a community on a specific social media platform related to that, but I eventually moved on to other platforms when my interest in that specific series waned. I wanted to engage more in the Pretty Cure community, but I didn't know how. That was until I decided that I would go ahead and create my very own fan series. I created my very first series at the beginning of July in 2018, and it was definitely heavily influenced by Smile Precure, as that was the series I was most familiar with at the time, mostly in terms of the color schemes. It is called Shining Lights Precure and is themed around gemstones and has a color scheme of pink, orange/red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Thusly, there were 6 cures. The pink cure is Kiku Nadeshiko, or Cure Ruby. The orange/red cure is Haruko Mikan, or Cure Topaz, formerly Cure Opal. The yellow cure is Hikari Hoshi, or Cure Citrine. The green cure is Yuina Hayashi, or Cure Jade. The blue cure is Yoko Kaita, or Cure Lazuli, formerly Cure Aquamarine. And the purple cure is Yukari Tsukiko, or Cure Amethyst, the mid-season cure. Of course, this isn't the most unique concept for a fan series ever, but this was also my very first series I ever made, and when you do something for the first time, you're not going to do the best, because you won't have a lot of experience. At the time, in my mind, my big thing for being unique with this concept was naming my green cure Cure Jade instead of Cure Emerald, as you typically see with gemstone-themed fan series. I also now use Cure Lazuli instead of Cure Aquamarine because that name is also frequently used. And I also know that the civilian name Hikari Hoshi for the yellow cure is incredibly generic, but again, this is my first series, and I've kind of come to accept the fact that the names and concepts aren't the best. I first came up with the concept design for Cure Ruby, and then I sketched out similar outfits for Topaz and Citrine. However, I then quickly decided I didn't like those specific designs, so I went ahead and just immediately redesigned them. I wanted them to have a more uniform look because the 2 teams with rainbow color schemes, Smile Precure and Yes Precure 5 Go Go, they all have a sort of uniform look. Those designs are the ones that are still in use to this day, with some minor revisions done in 2021. Story-wise, I never came up with anything really beyond what I wanted to happen in the series finale. My idea for that was to have Kyurubi sacrifice herself to defeat the villain and then actually die in the battle. Other than that though, I never had any really strong story ideas, and I never ended up writing any, chapters either. Shining Lights was my very first series, and I never went anywhere with it past designing the cures or coming up with vague story ideas, but it is still a series I adore because it was my first. I loved redrawing the cures last year, and I hope to give them some love in crossover chapters with my other series and other artwork in the future. My second series came about not too long after I came up with Shining Lights. I had just started my junior year of high school, which meant that another season of marching band had also begun. Marching band was something I absolutely loved, and is what kept me going through most of high school, so I figured, why not combine two things that I loved? Hence, my second series, Hibike Marching Precure, was born. There are 5 cures for this group, and they have the same color scheme as Hugto and Doki Doki. The pink cure is Honoka Momoko, cure trumpet. The blue cure is Aika Mizuko, cure flute. The purple cure is Kazue Shion, cure alto. The yellow cure is Ayla Andolina, cure mellow. And the red cure is Amy Nishiki, cure snare. Unlike my other series, this group doesn't have a mid-season type cure because I simply just don't feel like that one would fit in the group. Instead, I have Cure Mellow and Snare operating as a duo, who both appear slightly later than the first 3 cures, but not late enough to be considered mid-season cures. Other story details include Ayla being a transfer student who became a cure before Honoka, Aika, and Kazue while living in her home country. She then comes to Japan and homestays with Amy's family, and the two then grow close, almost as if they were sisters. And then to get their weapons for the second group attack, I played around with the idea that the cures each need to sacrifice themselves while revealing their identities to someone who is important to them. But that was never, really made concrete, since I never wrote chapters beyond chapter 2. I am thinking of changing the cure civilians' names, though. The reason for this is that I am from America, so when it comes to the marching band the aspect of the series, it would be based almost entirely around my own experiences, and the way marching band works in America versus Japan is very much different. I want to change it so Honoka, Ayaka, Kazue, and Amy are from America and have American names, while Ayla is a transfer student from Japan instead has a Japanese name. That idea is still up in the air, however, but I am definitely considering it. Around the start of 2019, I announced my 3rd fan series, which at the time I called Hopefully Precure. However, I have since changed the name to Flowering Royals Precure because, 1, I felt that the old name didn't really fit the theme of my series as much as I originally thought it did, and 2, because I was kinda sick of the comments I kept getting accusing me of stealing another creator series, even though the name was never copyrighted. But anyways, my 3rd series is called Flowering Royals Precure. And in terms of the inspiration for this series, I remember I was just getting the itch to create a new series, and I was talking with someone who suggested the theme of princesses, so I decided to do that and mix it up with the theme of the 4 seasons. That aside, the team consisted of 5 cures who are pink, yellow, blue, green, and white. The pink cure is Ayaka Aihime, or Cure Sakura. The yellow cure is Hina Chiaki, or Cure Light. The blue cure is Yuki Fuyuhi, or Cure Frost. The green cure is Koharu Enko, or Cure Meadow, and the white cure is Nymph, or Cure Radiance. Compared to the first 2, this series had a bit more solid development in terms of the story's background. Essentially, my story ideas were that Ayaka was a sort of long-lost princess who is the princess of one of the 4 sacred kingdoms of Japan, in an alternate universe, of course. She was left in the care of a family that was trusted by the royal family until she turned 16, at which point she moved back into the castle and began to learn about royal life. The reason as to why I wanted that to happen is still up in the air. Ayaka is slowly introduced to the other 3 princesses who she finds out each have their own unique hobbies they use to escape from the stressful world of royalty. They keep these hobbies a secret from everyone except each other so they aren't forced to quit them. One specific detail, or maybe more of a fun fact, I enjoy about this series is Frost's first attack, which is Precure Bomb Cyclone. This is based on a real-world weather event that I didn't even know existed until my state experienced one in early 2019. If I'm remembering correctly, it is essentially a special kind of snowstorm where the pressure in the storm cell is different or something. I'm not exactly sure, but I thought it was cool. And I figured I would work something so unique into a fan series of mine because why not? In recent terms, I've been reworking the designs of the cures for Flowering Royals because I just don't really like the original ones anymore. I decided to begin redesigning them for that reason, and also because I want them to have updated designs for the pseudo All-Stars movie one-shot I plan to write for Oceana Precure in the near future. Because each girl is a princess of an alternate universe Japanese kingdom, I decided to give them all kimono-style outfits, excluding Radiance since she's more of an earth spirit rather than a human. Oh, and yes, I am planning to write a sort of All-Stars movie chapter once Chapter 6 or 7 of Oceana Precure is released. In that chapter, the Hibike Marching and Flowering Royals Precure girls will all be making appearances. Now, before I move on to my last main series, I have some sort of honorable mentions of 2 series that existed for a short amount of time, but I ultimately cancelled. The first one was called Sweetness Precure. As a whole, it was very basic, and I never got further than the cure designs and names. Also, this is the only artwork I was able to find that still exists, so I apologize for the potato quality. And the theme, which was basically animals and Tamagotchis. The pink cure was Ayame, or Cure Bunny, the teal cure was Cure Puppy, the yellow cure was Cure Bear, and the purple cure was Cure Kitty. I eventually cancelled it because this series was made entirely on a whim and I didn't actually have the kick to work on it, nor did I love the characters. I just made it to make it. I do like Bunny's hair though, and I might reuse it for a future cure. The second series was called Time Fighters Precure, and originally came about as a collab between me and someone else on Amino. They eventually stepped away from it, and it became pretty much entirely mine. I had designs for the pink and blue cures, but I ended up deciding to use this series as a way to experiment with making gacha-like content. I did eventually learn it wasn't actually all that fun, but I did end up making an entire episode. The color scheme was the same as Flowering Royals, but with the colors debuting in a different order. The pink cure was Sakura Hanede, or Cure Hana, the blue cure was Karen Manami, or Cure Umi, the green cure was Furina Yuka, or Cure Ki, the yellow cure was Quinn Marley, or Cure Tayo, and the white cure was Hikaru Yamio, or Cure Hikari. The themes of the story were time travel in ancient Japan. My basic concept for the story was that when the cures transformed, that sent them back into the past, and that is where they would fight the bad guys. The bad guys would attack sometime in the past, and that would send ripple effects across time and start causing issues in the present. That is what would prompt them to transform. I eventually canceled this series because making gacha life content as a series was just very boring and so monotonous, and I just quickly lost interest. Having to pose characters and type out every little bit of dialogue was just not fun to do. I did remake the opening in 2021 though, so feel free to check that out if you'd like. Link is in the description. Moving on to my final, favorite, and most popular series, Oceana Precure. This series came about because I again got the itch to make a new Precure fan series, but this time around I wanted to put in the effort to actually come up with a solid story and produce content for it that people could read and enjoy. I wanted to make an actual fully fledged series rather than just a set of character designs. I wanted to almost fully commit to a series. The color scheme, for now, is pink, blue, yellow, and rainbow. The pink cure is Konasayo, or Cure Pearl, the blue cure is Shio Yumiko, or Cure Tide, the yellow cure is Hikaru Kishi, or Cure Reef, and the rainbow cure is Takumi Kaito, or Cure Nalu. There is a mid-season cure that some of you are likely already aware of since I've mentioned her in the past, but since I'm deciding to rewrite the series, I'm choosing to keep her a secret so new readers won't be spoiled. This cure won't be directly mentioned in the video. Now, for a basic summary of the story. Kona is a mermaid who lives underwater in a town called Coral Reef City. One day, her friend gives her the location of a shipwreck, which excites Kona because she loves going out into the open ocean to explore despite the many dangers. Kona ventures to the shipwreck and finds 4 mysterious seashell-shaped objects, a book, and the sea fairy known as Delphi. Delphi tells Kona that she is from a separate world called the Ocean Kingdom and has come to Earth in search of the legendary Precure. the Ocean Kingdom was attacked and destroyed by an evil king, and the prince of the kingdom was killed in the ensuing escape. The Precure are the only ones who have the power necessary to not only defeat the king and revive the Ocean Kingdom, but to also protect the Earth and keep it safe from his advances. Kona and Delphi are then attacked by one of the king's minions, and during the fight, Kona gains the ability to transform into a Precure. After this, she vows to help Delphi on her mission and find the remaining 3 cures. This is a basic description of the first chapter and a little information on what's to come in the future. There's a lot more that I have planned for the story, and I am very excited to share it with you all, but unfortunately, I can't do that quite yet. I don't want to spoil anything important because I want you all to be surprised when these important story events arise. However, I will share some less important things related to the individual characters and the arcs I wish to explore with them. For Kona, the main thing I'm going to explore with her is tied into the mid-season Cures arc as well, so I unfortunately can't say too much about what I want to do with her. For Heyo, what I want her arc to be about is coming to terms with her sexuality. The way I want to write it, Heyo's parents are very traditional and conservative, so unfortunately they raised Heyo believing that being anything other than straight is wrong. Heyo is a lesbian, but she struggled to accept this for a long time, and even tried to convince herself that she was in fact straight because of her upbringing. I want to focus her arc on learning to accept herself despite what her parents or society says about her, and that she should have pride in who she truly is, no matter what. I know this is a particularly testy subject because of the modern political climate, but I want to go along with it because a fictional character's sexuality shouldn't affect how one enjoys a story. That, and I want readers or fans of my series to feel welcome and accepted because that's how you build a healthy community. That being said, as of now, I am straight, so I'm bound to make some mistakes with such a topic. I want to get this right as to keep that sense of healthy community, so I'm perfectly open to ideas and suggestions from you guys on how to go about this properly. That, and I am generally open to any constructive criticism you might all have in general. Moving on to Hikaru, I want to give her a similar arc to Ran's from Delicious Party Precure's 16th episode. People in the school and her family view her as weird and abnormal because of her interest and sexuality. She was made fun of a lot growing up and is still occasionally teased in high school. Because of this, she is very insecure and masks these insecurities by bottling up her emotions inside of herself and not talking to anyone. I want to explore Hikaru learning to be more open with people and learning that it's okay to talk about your feelings, even if it may not always be easy. Finally, we have Takumi. I've got to be vague here too, because his arc is also tied in with an important plot point that I want to keep secret for the time being, but to summarize, I want to explore his struggles with learning about and coming to accept his past. Also, I promise his debut is going to be awesome. I am super excited for it. There's so much about the story of Oceana Precure that I want to tell you guys because I'm so excited, but I again don't want to ruin the surprise, so you guys are just gonna have to wait. Moving on from the characters to more of the background of the story's creation, I began writing Oceana Precure in 2020, and my initial goal was to write chapters that would release every single week alongside the new episodes of the canon series of that year, which was Healing Good. For the first 11 chapters, I was successful with this. I managed to post one chapter every single week. But after a while, this restriction I put on myself just became too much for me to handle. When writing every week, there were certain restrictions I had to put in place purely for the sake of publishing a chapter. There were minor examples of this, such as limiting the word count to something attainable within such a short time frame. Hell, the longest chapter ended up being just over 5,400 words, which is nothing close to what I can attain now. However, there were also much more important issues that arose, such as lackluster world building, character development, and the quality of the writing itself. It also just became quite boring to write filler chapters just for the sake of publishing. With such a tight schedule, I was unable to take the time to fully work out several different plot points I want to implement and tie them together in a way that makes sense. Because I was unable to properly work out those plot points, I was also unable to properly write them into the series and the story, and thus the chapters just became a garbled mess of filler and meaningless interactions. I look back on the original 14 Oceana Precure chapters and I just cringe at how bad they are. To me, it's all just rushed filler content because I was trying so hard to fit myself into a pre-established formula that only works because with the canon Precure series, there is a huge team of people behind it that handle every little aspect of the series, while I'm only one person. There's only so much I can do, but I'm still not satisfied with the content I produce. All of these feelings accumulated over time, and eventually, at the beginning of 2022, I made the decision to go back and begin rewriting the series as a whole. I wanted to improve the writing quality while also improving the story and the characters. I added a completely new member to the starting team, so I'd have to go back in and add him in to, make the story work there. I have only published 2 chapters thus far, but I am so much happier with the quality. Both chapters are much longer, but the content is richer and there's much more to go off of. Chapter 1 was originally 3,974 words, and Chapter 2 was 3,500 words. But in the rewrite, the chapters are 8,931 and 9,549 words respectively. I know to some readers that this seems like a daunting number and a lot of content to read, but the trade-off is a much more cohesive story that makes sense and doesn't come off as being entirely filled with filler content. With this rewrite, I feel much happier and much more confident with the story, and I am very excited with what's to come. Specifically, as I mentioned prior, I am very excited for Chapter 6, where Takumi will debut as a cure. I've planned out almost exactly how I want it to happen, and I am very happy with what I've got so far, and I'm very eager to see what the reaction will be from readers. Also, a fair note to mention, the rewrite will not have as many episodes as a canon series, because it's too many. That's just so much. And I'm not sure how many there will be, but it's definitely not going to be between like 40 and 40, or 50. That's way too much. So I think that's about it in terms of specific information on Oceana Precure and my various other fan series that I want to discuss. Now I want to move on to give some specific advice related to coming up with themes or character designs. My advice to those struggling to come up with a specific theme for a series: start with something you're passionate about outside of Precure. Don't create a series just to create a series, because that will likely result in you wanting to do nothing with it, and you'll lose the passion for it. That's a big reason why I ultimately canceled Sweetness Precure. It was a series I created just so I could have another series, and so there was no reason for me to really care about it and continue it. When it comes to a series like Hibike Marching Precure, however, I took something from my personal life that I really loved and enjoyed and turned that into a fan series. I may not have fully written out the series, but I still love and care for it, which kept me from completely canceling it. This isn't the only way for you to come up with a theme for your series, of course, but I think it's a good starting point and something worth at least exploring if you find yourself struggling. When it comes to designing the outfits for your cures, that is something I struggle with a lot, no matter how many series I create. There are plenty of designs I have made that I have ended up scrapping or I have put on the back burner for potential use later because I think they aren't good enough, or maybe I want to tweak them. What I tend to do when I am really struggling is I look around on Google or other platforms at different fan series and the designs other people have made and see if there are any elements of those designs I like, and then I take inspiration from that. Of course, I don't just outright take elements from designs, and you definitely shouldn't either, because that could fall into the category of plagiarism. But if you take inspiration and change an element of a design just enough so it becomes more unique to you, then that's of course perfectly fine. Here are a few examples of how I've done this in the past. When I was creating the designs for Oceana Precure, I took inspiration from the Wings Club Sirenix designs and the Siren Precure designs made by AC8. Sorry if I butchered that. For the scale legging part of the Oceana designs, because I thought it was a good way to keep the mermaid tail aesthetic while the characters would fight in their human form. I also took inspiration from Oceanic Precure made by Sekaiichi Happy. Specifically, I remember I really like how she used a layer of transparent fabric and put that over a layer of opaque fabric for the skirts. I really love using transparent fabric in my fan cure designs, so whenever I feel I can work it into a design, I will. So I took that concept and worked it into the Oceana Precure designs. These are only a few examples from my personal designs, but this is to show you how you can take inspiration from someone else, but then turn the idea or concept into something different, unique, and new for your own series. And again, of course, you don't want to take an exact idea from someone else to avoid plagiarism. But simply taking inspiration is perfectly fine, and everyone does it. Also, please check out the creators I just mentioned. They are both amazing artists and deserve all the love. I think that is all the specific advice I have, because there are so many elements that go into making a fan series, and there's a lot of them that I still struggle with. Also, this is just my personal experience with creating fan series, so this isn't the end-all be-all advice. Look around and see what other people say, and look into what may work best for you. There are many ways to come up with ideas and then put them down on paper, so whatever you feel works best for you is what you should do. I'm not the authority voice on creating Precure fan series. With my main 3 series, I never ended up writing full stories about them, but I was still just greatly passionate about what was there to keep them around. With the 2 I ultimately canceled, the passion and care wasn't there. When it comes to making a fan series, I think passion is important, because when you are passionate about something, that will help give you the motivation to do better and stay focused. It will give you the motivation to make your series amazing. Don't create just to create. Create because you're passionate. Create because you truly enjoy what you're doing. Create because you're excited. So that is it for the video. I had fun making it, and I hope you guys all enjoyed what I had to say. I love gushing about my fan series, and it feels good to finally talk about aspects of said series that I've kept private for such a long time. I also like being able to offer up advice to those who may be looking for it, because I want to be a helping hand to them. If you guys want to check out Oceana Precure and read the first 2 chapters of the rewrite, you can check those out on Archive of Our Own or Wattpad. If you'd like to check out the original version and see how bad it now is, that is also over on Wattpad. If you want to follow updates on the series or look at the art I make for it, you can follow the Oceana Precure account on Twitter or follow me over on DeviantArt. All links to these pages will be down in the description. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.